What was the French Revolution? Long ago, in the heart of Europe, there stood a beautiful country called France. Its cities sparkled with grand palaces, busy markets, and narrow streets filled with people of every kind. But beneath the beauty, many hearts were heavy, and many voices went unheard. This was the world just before the French Revolution. At the very top of society lived the king and queen, surrounded by gold, fine food, and endless celebrations. Below them were nobles and clergy who owned land and paid little or no taxes. And at the bottom were the common people, farmers, workers, and shopkeepers, who worked long hours, paid heavy taxes, and often struggled just to eat. Among these common people was a young baker named Pierre. Each morning before sunrise, Pierre kneaded dough while worrying whether he could afford flour the next day. Bread, the most important food in France, had become scarce and expensive. Hunger followed many families like a shadow. As the days passed, people began to ask questions. Why do we suffer while others live in comfort? Why do we have no voice in how our country is ruled? These questions spread from villages to cities, from whispers in kitchens to bold speeches in crowded squares. In 1789, the people's frustration reached its breaking point. Representatives of the common people gathered to demand change. When they were ignored, anger turned into action. Crowds filled the streets of Paris, and on one fateful day, they stormed a prison called the Bastille, a symbol of the king's absolute power. Its fall told the world that the people were no longer afraid. Across France, change swept like a powerful wind. Old laws were challenged and new ideas were born, ideas about liberty, equality, and brotherhood. These words carried hope, promising a nation where all people mattered, not just the powerful. But the revolution was not gentle. Fear and violence followed hope. Leaders rose and fell, and even the king and queen were put on trial and executed. France struggled to find balance between freedom and order, learning that change can be both necessary and painful. Through years of chaos and courage, the French Revolution transformed France forever. Kings no longer ruled by absolute power, and the idea that ordinary people deserved rights and a voice spread far beyond France's borders. And so, when we ask, what was the French Revolution? It was more than a rebellion. It was a moment when people stood up and declared that their lives, their voices, and their future mattered. And in doing so, they changed history.